Arundel County Human Relations Commission. um, the Anne Arundel County Human Relations Commission's statutory responsibilities have been expanded. We previously had just statutory responsibility over alleged housing discrimination. As a result of the action of the county council this past Monday, we now have additional statutory responsibility in areas of public accommodations, employment, and I think we also have statutory responsibility to produce a annual report every October over our actions and activities. And the areas of employment and public accommodations will cover alleged areas of violations of civil rights in those areas. And we will work to get the information out on our new statutory responsibilities. Hats off to county executive and the county council. We now join other large counties in the state with these kind of expanded statutory responsibilities. I would also like to say that we also have a general responsibility to work to make sure that our citizens understand that diversity, equity, and inclusion are ways that we can make Anne Arundel County, as the county executive and the county council want it to be, the best place for all. So I want to start before I call order and with my brief overview. I also want to say that we'll be working with the Director of Civil and Human Rights in the county, Director Asha Smith, to flesh out how we will address these new statutory responsibilities. And I don't think I missed any, did I, Director?
You did not.
Okay, thank you. Having said that, I would like to call the roll. As I call your name, say present. Commissioner Gaskin.
Present.
Commissioner Michaels. Commissioner Hayeva. Commissioner Deidone.
Present.
Commissioner Farris.
Yeah.
Commissioner Farris, I thought you're present.
He
Could you
said
unmute?
yes, but it couldn't be.
Oh, okay. I got you. Commissioner Apter. Commissioner Bodala.
Here.
Great. Commissioner Sorrow.
Present.
Okay, let me see if I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody.
Commissioner Hatch,
Hatcher,
here. Present.
Commissioner Newman,
Present.
I believe I have all commissioners. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Okay. We'll now, since we did not have a formal meeting because of the Unity Day event on March 19th, we will move to the presentation on fair housing. You all received an outline of that presentation and what it will entail. And I will turn the presentation over to Director Smith.
Thank you so much. And Chairman Peterson, it appears that Commissioner David and Commissioner After have joined. So I just wanted to
Okay, Commissioner After is here, and so is Commissioner Michaels. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to see you. Happy Fair Housing Month. We are excited to be bringing you a special presentation. This is not just me. This is on behalf of my office, the Office of Equity and Human Rights, and Lisa Saro's office, Arundel Community Development Services. We are going to be sharing the results of some fair housing testing that's been going on in our jurisdiction for several months. We partnered with the Equal Rights Center to do that. And so we do have someone from the Equal Rights Center with us. We also have some great panelists. We have Cleveland Horton from the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. We have Jennifer Jackson from our Office of Disability and Aging. And so we are going to be talking about testing and what that's looked like in our county, what the results mean, and we're going to be doing that for about an hour. We have a presentation for you, and that's going to be followed by a few questions to our panelists. So welcome, everyone, and again, thank you for joining us. And I am going to ask my co-facilitator, Commissioner Saro, to unmute. So if you bear with me just one second, I'm going to share my screen. In the meantime, Commissioner Saro, maybe you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I am a commissioner here on the Human Relations Commission for Anne Arundel County, and I am also general counsel at Arundel Community Development Services. So ACDS is Anne Arundel County's nonprofit housing and community development agency. So we provide advice and counsel to the county on housing issues, including fair housing issues, and then we do a whole array of services, including some direct services to residents, and also we're responsible for assisting the county to facilitate funding for the development of affordable housing in the county. And as part of our role with the county, we're tasked with ensuring that the county is meeting its mandates in terms of fair housing and affirmatively furthering fair housing. And as part of that, we have engaged in this testing program that we're going to tell you about the results of in just a few moments.
If I can ever get my screen shared. So of course, I'm having a little challenge with the tech, but please bear with me just a second. I just want to make sure that you guys can see everything.
There it is.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the theme for Fair Housing Month this year is the Act in Action, obviously referencing the Fair Housing Act, and the theme is selected by HUD each year. Okay, I just want to make sure we're all working. As we said, we have Lisa Sorrow from Arundel Community Development Services. I'm Asha Smith. I'm the Director of Equity and Human Rights in the Office of the County Executive, and it is our pleasure to be here. I just want to give a quick background. This is not intended to be a law class or a primer on fair housing laws, but it is important to know a little bit about the law and why testing is even done. So I just want to talk a little bit about the Fair Housing Act and our state and local laws. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in housing, as does Maryland law. And now, well, since 2019, Anne Arundel County law does as well. Okay, so all of these laws taken together prohibit discrimination on the basis of one's membership in what's called a protected class. Federally, you cannot discriminate against someone in housing on the basis of their race, color, religion, national origin, their sex, which includes sexual orientation and identity, their disability, and their familial status. The state of Maryland adds 2 additional protected classes. It adds marital status. So in the state of Maryland, you can't discriminate against somebody in housing based on their marital status or their source of income. And source of income refers to how it is that you lawfully pay for where it is that you live. Generally, it refers to vouchers, but it means things other than vouchers too. The county has all of those protections and includes age, ancestry, creed, and occupation. So taken together, this is the landscape. If you live in Anne Arundel County, you can't be discriminated against in housing for any of these reasons, okay? The other thing that the Fair Housing Act and our state law does is to mandate that local jurisdictions like Anne Arundel County take steps to affirmatively further fair housing. That is very specific language. And so we'll get a little bit more into what that means. But it's important for you to know that testing arises out of both of those things. 1, preventing discrimination, but 2, affirmatively furthering fair housing. We have a little video for you, and I'm going to let Commissioner Sorrow introduce it.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that you have an understanding of what testing is. So this first video that we're going to show you is an old video. It's from more than 20 years ago that the Ad Council put out about how people are discriminated against in their everyday efforts to find housing, just picking up the phone and making a phone call to try to rent an apartment. And you can tell from you'll be able to tell from the quality of the video that it's older, but the same problem still exists today. So go ahead, Asha.
Hello. Yes, can I ask a few questions about the apartment on Park Street?
What was your name?
My name is Juan Hernandez.
It's been rented.
Oh, he's gone. Hello, my name is Sanjay Kumar. I am calling about the apartment on Park Street.
It's not available.
Not available?
Hello, my name is Tyrone Washington. I'm calling about the apartment on Park Street.
Just been rented.
Hello, I am Chen Ling. My name is Khalid bin Ali. I'm Tuan Vo.
Hello, my name is Moshe Goldberg.
I use a wheelchair. It's gone. Not available. All right. Thank you.
Yes, hello, my name is Graham Wellington. I'm calling about the apartment for rent on Park Street. Is that still available?
Yes, it is.
What is?
Yes.
Really?
Housing discrimination is illegal. If you think you've been a victim because of your race, color, national origin, sex, religion, disability, or family status, call us. Fair housing. It's not an option. It's the law.
Hello.
Okay, Commissioner Sorrow.
So what I was going to say is that that is a sort of exaggerated look at how we see this type of discrimination happening, but you can see how it happens in a really everyday way. Just picking up the phone and trying to make a visit or an appointment to make a visit to see an apartment. That's the most basic way that people are prevented from having equal access to housing. So affirmatively furthering fair housing is an obligation that counties have. Jurisdictions have to affirmatively further fair housing. That consists of having a fair housing plan. And we're going to talk in a few minutes about a report that the jurisdictions have to put out is showing that they are, in fact, affirmatively furthering fair housing. And what that means is meaningful actions to overcome patterns of segregation, to foster inclusive communities, and eliminate those barriers that are restricting access, such as discrimination in admission for housing, addressing significant disparities in need, replacing segregated living patterns. That's comes up a lot in zoning issues and also where new affordable housing is being built. Putting some of that affordable housing in areas where it might not have otherwise been in the past, in areas of opportunity. Transforming racially and ethnically concentrated areas of poverty into areas of opportunity. So not just bringing people from areas that may have been under-resourced into opportunity zones, but taking opportunity to areas that have been traditionally under-resourced, and then fostering and maintaining compliance with civil rights and fair housing laws. And that's where we get to testing. And that's something that we're excited to have done for the first time in this county in a really concentrated way. Asha, did you want to take this one or do you want me to?
No, you go right ahead.
Okay, I think I jumped on your slide that last one.
I might have gotten that a little confused, but that's all right. We're working it out. Go ahead.
We're rolling. So HUD mandates that jurisdictions that receive federal funds, and of course we receive federal funds for housing, analyze the impediments to fair housing choice in their jurisdiction. And it has to be done on a regular basis. The last one was performed in this area in 2020. It's basically, they call it the AI, but it's really your mandatory fair housing plan. And ACDS, as the county's Housing and Community Development Agency, is responsible for pulling that report together. And to do that, we work with other large jurisdictions in the area. And we are part of what's called the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. And we work with those other jurisdictions to create a regional report, fair housing plan report, with specific jurisdictional sections. So we'll have a specific section on Anne Arundel County and the challenges that we have and the plans that we're making. The AI has to include an examination of data on classes protected under the Fair Housing Act. We have to identify barriers to housing choice for people in protected classes, and then we have to create an action plan. So, as I said, the last one was in 2020, and we're just ramping up to put together the next one. It's expected to be finished in 2025. And what I would love to share with you is that stakeholders have an opportunity to provide input to each part of the fair housing or the fair housing plan. And we would love for people to be involved. And so small and large focus groups are forming now to participate in the development of this report. If you would like to participate and be a part of identifying barriers and coming up with plans for removing those barriers, please reach out to me directly. I think my contact information will be available at the end, and if not, I'll put it in the chat. And reach out to me and I will get you onto the list so that you can participate along with us.
Thank you. So just to recap before we get into the results, essentially we have some legal mandates under federal, state, and local fair housing laws. One thing that we know is that under those laws, we can't discriminate against people in housing because of their protected classes. The other thing that we know is that we have a duty to make sure that we're dismantling basically historic issues that resulted in housing segregation and in substandard housing for people in certain protected classes. That puts a duty on us as a jurisdiction to be taking affirmative steps to make sure that we are dismantling discrimination in housing as it manifests itself in a number of ways, including segregated living patterns, including concentrations of poverty, including violations of the law, etc. Okay, and so we do have this analysis of impediments that Lisa just described. This is one step that we take to make sure, and it's mandated, to make sure that we are affirmatively furthering fair housing. We partner with the Baltimore Metropolitan Council to create that plan. And Anne Arundel County is part of the regional plan, and the city of Annapolis is also part of that regional plan. And so Commissioner Sorrow is taking volunteers for people who want to give input on the plan. So without further ado, we want to talk a little bit about fair housing testing specifically. The reason why we do fair housing testing is to identify discrimination in the rental market and to take appropriate action. That's why we conducted this. We have done some work in the sale market as well. However, this evening we are focusing on the results of testing the rental market. Okay, appropriate action, when we talk about how to take appropriate action based on testing, appropriate action includes enforcement action. That means that you go out and when people have violated the law, you hold them accountable for what they've done by filing a complaint, giving them the opportunity to respond. And if they violated the law, you determine what action you want to take. And that is something that is determined by the Human Relations Commission. That's what the commission is authorized to do. The other thing that testing allows you to do is outreach and education, which is critically important. In our jurisdiction, we recognize the need to make sure that people are aware of the law, that they understand how it's to be implemented. And this testing process is one step in informing our strategies around outreach, education, and enforcement. Everything that we do is data-driven. And so it's helpful for us to know where, as a county, we might be having issues with discrimination, with ignorance of the law, with people not understanding the application of the law. Okay, Commissioner Sorrow, do you want to talk about how the testing is done?
Sure. So how it's done, in those instances where there's been a complaint, we might send out a tester to a specific location to either do paired testing, which is 2 people going, or just one with a visible or obvious membership in a protected class. But what we've done for this particular testing program is it wasn't complaint based. What we wanted to do, having never really had a testing program in the past, was get a feel for what's going on in our community. And so the testers with the Equal Rights Center went out, they did some phone testing where they would just call and actually say, I have this disability or need that's related to a disability, or I've got this source of income, a voucher, or two people would go and have two different and see what the results were. When you have paired testing, two people with virtually identical backgrounds will seek similar housing from the same provider. So they will have the same finances, same credit rating, rental history, etc. The only difference is that one is a member of a protected class and the other is not. And we'll see kind of what that looks like in phone testing in the next little video that we'll show you. Whoops, we're not quite there yet though, Asha.
Oh, sorry. How do I go back?
Okay.
Lord help
That's
me.
okay.
All right, there we are.
Oh, good, thanks. Before we actually see that video, I do just want to mention, because the Human Relations Commission was supporting legislation that was introduced this past session that would have changed a recording rule in Maryland. I do want to mention that there are some legal limitations on testing in the state of Maryland, because Maryland has what's called a two-party consent rule. So we can't secretly record conversations that are being had during these tests. So if someone goes into a rental office or is making a phone call, that phone call cannot be recorded, because the other party wouldn't know that it was being recorded. That law may be changed in the future, but for right now, you have to have two-party consent, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense to tell someone that you're testing that, hey, by the way, I'm going to be recording your response to this, so be on your best behavior. So that is a limitation that we have, but now we can move on so you can see what telephone paired testing looks like.
Hello, is this Adam's apartment? My name is Maria Mendoza, and I was calling to see if there's any available one-bedroom apartment. Oh, you don't? When do you think you'll have a vacancy? In 3 months? Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Hi, my name is Kathy, and I'd like to rent a one-bedroom apartment. Do you have any units available at Adams Apartments? Oh, you have two. Wonderful. Could I arrange to see them this afternoon? Perfect. I'll be there in an hour. Thank you.
So that gives you an idea of how the testing process works. The goal is to, put two people, different protected classes, to ask for the same thing in substantially the same way and see if they get different responses. So the rental market testing that was conducted by the Equal Rights Center occurred between March 1st of 2023 and February 29th of 2024. They conducted 70 tests. That included 65 different properties, 53 different housing providers. The testing was done in all geographical areas of the county intentionally. They did 25 source of income tests. So that means 25 of those tests were evaluating whether a landlord would discriminate against a prospective tenant based on how they intended to pay their rent. 25 of the tests were testing for disability discrimination. 10 of the tests tested for race, and 10 tested for national origin. Just as a little caveat, the best tests for race and national origin are done in person. They're a little more costly, but we got some solid testing done, and this is what they completed for us. It was a total of 70 tests. And so without further ado, drum roll please, fanfare. These are our results. So in terms of the disability discrimination testing, evidence of discrimination was found in 20% of the tests. Generally speaking, the issues that seemed to arise the most were the characterization of service animals as pets, right, which they are not, and applying pet policies to the service animal. So this means that a landlord is going to ask for a pet deposit, which you can do for a pet, but not a service animal. They may try to ask about breeds, which you can do for pets, but not service animals. And the other issue that came up that they tested for was whether a landlord would provide a reasonable accommodation in the form of a parking space. So if a resident with or a prospective tenant with a disability requested a dedicated parking space as an accommodation, would the landlord know what to do with that? And there was evidence that, some landlords didn't know what to do. They were not inclined to give the accommodation, or they weren't sure. They would say things like they weren't sure if they could give the accommodation. So that was the result of our disability discrimination testing. In terms of source of income, right? There was evidence of discrimination in 20% of the tests. What the testers found is that there were explicit statements made about accepting vouchers. So that means that a landlord says, we don't accept vouchers, or we don't accept programs, right? That's typically how that presents. The landlord is just very clear. We don't accept this. We don't accept Section 8 or whatever it might be. There were misrepresentations about the tenant's share of rent. And how that can present is that a tenant presents with a voucher that, let's say, it covers a certain percentage of the rent. The landlord will say, as an example, oh, if you have any income at all, you have to pay 30% of the total rent, regardless of how much the voucher covers. They also found that a landlord might inquire about a credit score and then just disappear, just not respond to the tenant once they found out that they had a voucher. So those are the results for those two areas. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Saro to talk to you about the race and national origin testing.
Right. So the race testing, not terribly surprising, did not show overt evidence of discrimination. This is not a point in time in our history where people don't know that discrimination based on race is illegal in housing. And so you're not going to probably find in most instances really overt levels of discrimination. So we weren't terribly surprised that there wasn't really overt signs of discrimination based on race. If we were to dig a little bit deeper, we probably would find, based on the results that we saw in this testing, that discrimination based on race is often more nuanced, and you have to dig a little bit deeper than maybe the initial testing. And the Equal Rights Center did come up with some locations that they thought would probably be good for retesting. Subtle differences are evident, rather than just, I'm sorry, I don't rent to people of color, or, that's not going to happen in this day and age in most instances. Now, the national origin, there was a finding of evidence of discrimination based on different pricing, different availability, and declining to show an apartment. And so, in other words, for the white tester, they took the tester to the apartment, showed them that apartment in person. The other one, they said, well, you know what, we can't take you to see it, but here it is on the computer. Those types. So race, national origin, the fact that we didn't see as much in these initial audit tests doesn't lead us to believe it's not happening. It just, we know, is going to require a deeper dig. And probably this is the type of testing that we will need in response to specific complaints about locations.
Thank you. Okay, so the Equal Rights Center put together this amazing map of the county, and they showed what they tested. So everywhere where you see a red or a blue dot is someplace that they tested in the county. And then anywhere that you see a red dot is where they found evidence of discrimination. And then the blue dots are tests that were inconclusive, where they could not confirm that there was discrimination, or where there wasn't necessarily evidence of discrimination, but they documented the test. So this is just something for you to mull over. Well, we have a commissioner representing each councilmanic district. So commissioners, you can look at your districts and see what you notice.
Yeah. What I found really interesting about this map is that you can see red dots in pretty much every part of the county. And so this isn't just it's not isolated. And again, these don't mean that these are not instances where we would necessarily want to go out and say, "Ooh, you're in big bad trouble." What we're looking for is perhaps housing providers that could use some education, that could need to learn about support animals, or the requirement that they ensure that people have access to good parking spaces, accessible parking spaces. But it's everywhere. And that I thought that was really illustrative in this map.
Another trend that you'll notice is that, and it's not just here, by the way, not just in Anne Arundel County, but where you have more people, where you have higher density, you're likely to have more complaints, right? And so if you look at the areas where complaints were found, or evidence was found, you'll see that it's clustered: Glen Burnie, high density; Odenton, high density; Annapolis, high density. So this map is good. It shows us where we may have some work to do. The other thing that I want to point out is what this testing doesn't tell us, right? It doesn't tell us that there's no discrimination in certain places. It's not intended to be exhaustive. It's audit testing, and what it's intended to do is to give us an idea, like Commissioner Sorrow said, so that we can know how to guide our efforts. We can know where more testing might be required. So we hope it's been instructive in that way. And last but not least, I just wanted to run through some resources. We have a few sites here and some additional reading that you can do if you're interested in this topic. Our office's website is listed here. ACDS, our partner, our county's community development agency, their website is listed here. The Equal Rights Center, which partnered with us to conduct this testing, their website is here, and they have lots of great information about cases that they've worked on, and their testing program at that website. Housing discrimination under the Fair Housing Act is a great guidance document that's put out by HUD. I recommend reading that. You can learn a little bit more about the duty to affirmatively further fair housing, among other things. MCCR is the state's civil rights agency. Their website is linked here. And finally, if you want to see the analysis of impediments to fair housing document that has been guiding our our regional activities for the last 4 years, it's linked here. It's the 2020 analysis of impediments, and it is put out by the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, which ACDS retains to do this work for us, as the many of our local jurisdictions do as well. So without further ado, that is our presentation, and now we are going to transition to our panel. First, I'm going to stop sharing. I feel like that's the extent of my tech skills on display. Okay, so I would like to now introduce our wonderful panelists, and I'm going to ask them if they can to turn their cameras on, with the understanding that some of them cannot. I know that at least one of them might be driving. Okay, so we have with us Jennifer Jackson from Aging and Disabilities. She's our ADA coordinator. Jennifer, can you unmute and say hi to the people?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here. As Asha mentioned, I'm the ADA coordinator, and I handle the accommodation requests and complaints that come in both from Fair Housing and for Title II and III of the ADA.
Thank you. And then we have from the Equal Rights Center, Lee Birdwhistle, who's been a close collaborator with us. Lee, you want to unmute and just say hello?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for having me.
And then we have Cleveland Horton II, who is now the acting director of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. Cleveland.
Good evening, Asha. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Of course, you know, Asha, I am still in the car coming from our previous fair housing event, but it is a pleasure to be here this evening.
Thank you for joining us. MCCR actually had a wonderful fair housing event today in Greenbelt. I was a panelist there before coming back to do this evening. And so clearly we appreciate Cleveland's time on the call. All right, so we just want to ask a few questions to our panelists to get some information about how to interpret what we've heard and how to contextualize it in terms of our county. So the first question is for Jennifer. Jennifer, anecdotally, as you looked at the results, do they square with what you've heard anecdotally in your office or with what you hear from around the county?
I would have to say a resounding yes. I can tell you in all of the fair housing complaints that I've received, and I do get quite a few, I just had 2 last week, my number one reason is refusal or denial of accommodation for reserved parking. When I reach out to the leasing offices and the property management companies, it's always a lack of knowledge on their part of understanding what their requirements are under the law, how to handle accommodation requests, and the way that they would go about to respond to those requests, or honor those requests and implement them once they receive them from a tenant.
Awesome. Thank you for, I'm glad that you were able, I'm so glad that you're here because it's really good to hear that, you know, what the testing shows is consistent with what you and your office experience on the ground. It certainly validates the importance of the testing and also the potential accuracy of the testing. So thank you for that. Okay, Lee, next questions are for you. One of the things that we got back in our results from the Equal Rights Center was about source of income discrimination and how that can be a proxy for race. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned previously, source of income covers any number of things, any legally acquired source of making money. For us, we often, not always, we do some testing based on those things, but for the most part, we do testing based on housing choice vouchers and kind of equate source of income with being a voucher holder. So we do a lot of testing on what voucher holders are experiencing when they go to apply for housing. In our service area, so the ERC service area is DC, Maryland, and Virginia, a disproportionate number of voucher holders are Black. And so we've had prior success litigating cases and showing that discrimination against voucher holders is very, very likely to have a disparate impact on the basis of race. So as Lisa mentioned, very rarely are we finding instances of people saying, I won't rent to you as a Black person. But what we do see is people saying no vouchers allowed. And often that equates to no Black people. And so admittedly, we didn't run statistical analysis for Anne Arundel County, but the proportion and the demographics of voucher holders are very similar to those in DC, where we have done the deeper statistical analysis. And so it's source of income testing is really a critical way to capture the kind of more subtle and kind of sneaky form of discrimination, because landlords are adapting and finding creative ways to shirk the law. And making the disparate impact claim is one really good tool to kind of challenge the discrimination that's a little bit more difficult to see and suss out.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Just so that everybody knows, the Equal Rights Center is really experienced in this area. Their testing methodology has been litigated. It's been tested in litigation and found to be sound. And so we certainly are very deferential to the methodology they use and their findings. And so thank you for explaining that. I have another question for you, Lee. And this is about an observation that you made about the rental market in Anne Arundel County. And one of the things that you guys noted was that the minimum rent in our area for a lot of the units that you saw was just above the voucher threshold. It was set just above that threshold. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means, like the significance of that?
Yeah, so what we have found is that essentially if properties are consistently, in condition and location comparable to other places, but they are consistently just $30 sometimes, or $50 or $100 above the payment standard, it sort of gives us pause. And basically what it means is that a voucher holder could never apply to live there. And we can't reasonably conduct testing to even figure out what their policies are, because they can simply say, our units are outside the payment standard. It doesn't matter anyway. And so when housing providers kind of consistently across all of their properties, no matter where they are in a county or in a jurisdiction, always fall just like right outside, it is one of those things we can't capture with testing, but it is notable.
Thank you. And I think that's really important because it speaks to the importance of capturing other trends in the market, right? Like as we look holistically at the state of the rental market in our county, it's good information to have about affordability and how that can really affect people. And like you said, it's not something you can test for, but it's something to note. So thank you for bringing that to our awareness. All right, my next question is for Cleveland. Cleveland, can you tell us, so MCCR has now been enforcing the source of income law for just a few years. Are there any trends that the agency has observed regarding source of income discrimination?
Sure, and thanks for the question, Asha. Again, as you indicated, we've been enforcing source of income since 2020. We've just more recently started really getting significant complaints as it pertains to source of income. And that's for a number of factors. One of the factors being the partnership that we have with ERC. ERC has been very aggressive in this area in reference to bringing complaints to us now that we have authority over source of income, which is now why we start to see a significant uptick in the actual number of source of income complaints that we receive. We also contribute that to just the level of education and outreach. So even though, again, the law passed and given us authority over source of income in 2020, we know that typically it takes time for the public to be educated around what their rights are and to begin to file complaints with the appropriate authority. So it's taken some time. We have created a number of education and outreach activities around source of income to educate folks around what their rights are as it pertains to source of income. So as a result of, again, a multitude of different things, we're now beginning to see, I wanted to say an uptick, but we are now beginning to see source of income being a major protected class for our agency. So again, in 2020, 2021, we didn't have any complaints of source of income discrimination. In 2022, we started to see, again, those complaints coming in. And now in 2023, source of income is one of our top 5 protected classes as it pertains to housing discrimination. And we anticipate for 2024, which for us ends on June 30th, that source of income will go from being like the number 5 protected class, probably more so. I would venture to believe, just based off of some of our preliminary numbers, probably up to number 3, because of the significant increase in complaints that we're now beginning to see.
Thanks, Cleveland. I have another question for you, and I think I might have leaked it to you earlier. But in terms of one of the things that we saw is that we have some national origin complaints or national origin issues in the testing. The findings were that 20% of the tests were positive for evidence of discrimination in the area of national origin. And so I'm wondering, in terms of your populations with limited English proficiency, I'm wondering, do you find that you're getting complaints from those groups, and have you been able to sort of penetrate those groups in terms of education and outreach?
That's a great question, Asha. I think typically what happens, I would say from a national origin perspective, while we do receive some complaints, we do not receive a significant number of those complaints directly to the state agency, our agency. A lot of those complaints are typically filed with the local agencies because individuals have greater access to those local agencies, which in part answers your second question as well, is that historically we have, just like many local HRCs, have struggled with figuring out how do we reach individuals who are in those LEP communities. How do we build that trust? We know that many of these individuals, regardless of your messaging, regardless of what you say and how you say it, there's a significant mistrust when it comes to government. So again, no matter what we say and how we package it, we're still a governmental agency. So we've tried to do our best with partnering with local advocacy organizations to make that connection for us. But it is still very difficult to gain the trust of the community being a governmental agency. So again, it is important for agencies such as the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights and agencies such as the Anne Arundel County Office of Human Rights to really partner with agencies like ERC, CASA, to help bridge the gap between the governmental agencies and the community, so that the community feels more comfortable, even if it's just coming to an ERC or coming directly to a CASA, to provide them with the information in reference to what's going on. And then the information is then passed on to the government, the appropriate governmental agency to utilize their appropriate enforcement resources. But it's kind of been an historic challenge. We're doing so. It continues to be a challenge. But we are continuing to be open-minded and innovative in reference to what we can do to better connect to those communities, especially those underserved communities, because we know that is a significant issue.
Thank you, Cleveland. And that was a really comprehensive answer. I think that that's been our experience too in Anne Arundel County, is that, and it's not just us again, right? I think historically it's challenging to have, deep relationships between government and some of our LEP communities, but a lot of the local advocacy organizations and groups do have those relationships, and we've tried to, not just in my office, but I know that the county executive's office in general has tried to be very deliberate about reaching out to some of those and maintaining good relationships with some of those advocacy groups so that they can hear what's going on. But I fear that these concerns are underreported. And, I think that's something. In some of the complaints that I've just gotten into my office, the egregiousness of some of the discrimination against folks who have limited English proficiency is kind of unbelievable. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
I agree, Asha. I agree 100%, Asha, and I do apologize. I meant to mention it earlier when you introduced me, but I just wanted to give yourself and, of course, the Anne Arundel County Office of Human Rights a shout out and congratulations on getting the civil rights legislation passed. I think that's a big step in the right direction for Anne Arundel County. I know you put a lot of work into that, so I just wanted to congratulate you and your office in reference to doing so.
Thank you very much, Cleveland, and always thank you for the support. Okay, so at this point, I want to be respectful of our panelists' time. I'd like to give Eugene the opportunity to close us out for this portion of the program, and then obviously our panelists are free to drop off or to listen in the background, and the commissioners have the opportunity to respond to what they've heard. Lisa, were you going to say something?
Just wanted to jump in before we close out, just to again thank our panelists, all of our panelists, of course, for coming and providing input. But I also wanted to give a special thanks to the Equal Rights Center for having worked with us when Asha and I approached the Equal Rights Center. We were not sure how to structure a testing program. This was not something that had been done in the county before. And the Equal Rights Center really provided us with some good education and ideas. And they were flexible and worked really hard with us to provide us with information that would be useful and helpful. And so I just want to give them a special, Lee and your team, a special shout out and thank you for providing this information to us and being so flexible and educational in your interactions with us. So we're looking forward to continuing our relationship and work with you.
Big kudos.
I too would like to thank the panelists for a very informative presentation. Strikes me that we need to redouble our efforts in Anne Arundel County to pass affordable housing legislation, because it seems to me that all of this speaks to especially a source of income and rental costs, especially, tell us that the traditional way that people not get a hand out, but a hand up, is to start with a rental and then get enough resources together to buy their starter home. And I fear that that opportunity is escaping us in Anne Arundel County, and we may be becoming like the old novel, as a county, it was the best of times for some and the worst of times for many. And so I hope that we can work with our county council to see a way to, if not pass affordable housing legislation, do some of the things that the advocates on the council of the legislation suggested that would make affordability more than a hope, but actually a reality. So again, I want to thank all the panelists, and I'll open this up to commissioners for any comments.
I'm going to estimate that it might have been in the late 70s or 80s. Is it me? Because I've been around and renting apartments since the 70s. So has the fair housing laws, were they stronger? And Eugene, you might know this too. Have they been stronger in the past? And then the fair housing policies and also the equal rights have been weakened, and now they're just beginning to become stronger again?
So, yeah, so no, they have not been weakened. All of the fair housing laws that follow on from the original Fair Housing Act, which is 1968, maybe? I can't remember, 64, right. 68, have built on the Fair Housing Act. And additional acts have come, in particular, the Americans with Disabilities Act, that also applies to housing, and a requirement that reasonable accommodations be made. And then there's no longer age discrimination that is covered in the Fair Housing Act, but or at least in the state and local Fair Housing Act. So no, they have not been weakened and are not just being reinvigorated. There is a duty to affirmatively further fair housing, which is being looked at more closely by HUD now than probably it ever has been before. And that may be what explains what you're seeing as a renewed interest or increase in enforcement.
So these laws have been on the books for a while, and even on the books here in Anne Arundel County and the state. Our commission is becoming more of a integral part of helping to make sure that they are fairly applied.
I would say yes.
I'll take a stab at that and in a larger issue. Let me say that we have been given additional responsibilities, and I see that strengthening our ability or strengthening our need to get out into the community and talk about these issues. I think that the presentation that we had, and I don't know whether this can be done, Director Smith, but if we could cut that out and then make that available to some of our partners. I'm thinking of the Caucus of African American Leaders, the NAACP, the Black Ministers Alliance, our housing advocacy groups, and see if they would be interested in, getting it to them and maybe seeing if they would like the same presentation that we had, that would, I think, get this out in a more concentrated and effective manner. Do you think that's possible, Director?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
We had already planned to sort of adapt or abridge the report that we got from the Equal Rights Center, so that the results are kind of in one place, and maybe it's a one-pager.
Yes.
That you can.
Yeah, we should put that report on our webpage and get it out to other advocacy proponents in the community, because affordable housing is not just a need, it's a human right, and we need to couch our discussion in that way. The other thing that, let me get to Commissioner Gaskin.
I'm sorry. So I have a question. I don't know if Lee should have answered this question, but since we couldn't ask some questions, I noticed on the map that there weren't many dots in Pasadena, Arnold, and Severna Park area. Is that because there aren't a lot of rental properties there, so there wasn't a lot of testing done there, or just because there weren't any findings of discrimination?
I think that in that I think it's probably both, actually. But I can look and confirm that information for you. I think it's both.
And most of the locations that they tested were the larger facilities, and there aren't as many of those in those areas, I think. And we also had some limitations because we were trying to get as many tests as we could in particular areas. We did have a few areas where we were suspecting that we really wanted tests to be done. And so as we move forward, I think we'll get more targeted testing in specific areas, so that we're sure to cover the entire county. But that's a good question. There are some spots that we just really didn't hit but mostly I think because there weren't properties that really fit within the needs for this audit testing.
Commissioner Daydoni?
I follow a Facebook group called Sefuerte, Sefuerte, mostly in Spanish, but you can hit the translate button and understand clearly enough what's happening. And the stories posted there, the requests for help, for information and insight, are coming from individuals working with individuals renting apartments, renting basements. I'm not seeing so many from people who are going to the large apartment houses. And it sounds like so far the testing has been done at the level of the large apartment houses. I would anticipate it will continue that way with realtors and with large apartment houses, because you can't go to every individual renter with 1 or 2 units to rent. Yet a lot of the abuse is happening at that level. I offer that as a conundrum I don't know how to face. Can you help me?
Right. And that's likely where we're going to see the testers, if testing played a role in ferreting out or proving that type of discrimination, that's going to be complaint driven. Yeah. And so really where I'm seeing the help for individuals that are and households that are in that situation is through the advocacy groups. I'm not familiar with Sefuerte, but CASA has been a huge tenant advocate, particularly in the last few legislative sessions. And they step in to provide assistance on an individual basis.
Commissioner Michaels?
Yes. Lisa, are you planning to reach out to Lori and present this maybe to the Benevolence Coalition?
Yeah, that's a great idea. At minimum, we can certainly make them aware of the availability of the presentation as we get it up on the Human Relations Commission. But we could do it in let's talk about that.
Okay.
And for those who don't know, the Benevolence Coalition is a really robust, great organization of faith-based and other nonprofit organizations. It's an informal group that has become a real force to be reckoned with, incredible help to residents in the community.
So I would like to, pardon me?
Commissioner Apter.
Thank you. Forgive me if I'm not correct, but if we have newly recognized enforcement ability in housing and other forms of discrimination, I haven't seen us taking the lead to do that. In other words, it's one thing to go out and show a video or saying it's against the law, you can do something about it. It's another to actually show what an example of what could happen. I don't know of any example of us, the Human Relations Commission, dealing proactively with discrimination. And I think we ought to sit down and figure out how we're going to do that, not just get the word out that it's against the law, but do something about it.
Point well taken. I was going to bring that up. You had suggested that we do some discussion about that. I do think that Commissioner Sorrow is right. If we have rental companies that aren't aware or aren't fully implementing these things, the first step is to say, we'd like to talk with you, we'd like to inform you, and then we can act, but we're not police, so we can't go in and say, we know what you're doing and we're going to shut you down. We have to work through a complaint process, and we
yes,
also
I know we have to stimulate people who are faced with this with the option of complaining in an organized way to us or to some other entity. You know, I am sure that there is no major rental organization in Anne Arundel County, in the state, in the country, that doesn't know that, you know, there's a federal law prohibiting it. That's not the issue. The issue is there any option for the individual person who is subject to this discrimination to deal with it? And we ought to look at what we can and should do. We haven't done that.
Well, we'll have time during our commission meetings to have that discussion and have other commissioners weigh in on it. I think we need to take a thoughtful approach, and I think it has to be one that addresses the concerns that you have and comes up with a way to make those kind of connections. And there are ways, I believe, we can do that. In addition to presenting the issue before the rental agencies and making sure that they are doing the kind of training and informational response for their agents that doesn't give them an out to say, well, we didn't know, we weren't aware, and we need to go back and work on it. So we can do both things at the same time, I believe.
I'm sure we could, but we haven't done one at all. We haven't used the club that we have at our disposal to try and bring action against landlords that are discriminating against various and sundry minorities. We ought to bring up a test case.
Well, in order to bring it, that'll get into the discussion that I will have on what happened to the wiretapping electronic surveillance legislation, because that would have been exactly the kind of vehicle that would allow us to do what you're doing, what you're saying you want done legally.
We can still do it, you know, yes, that'd be nice if we had that. But, you know, if we don't have it, we still can, you know, have a confrontation one way or the other between individuals who have been discriminated against versus landlords. You know, yeah, it'd be nice if we had a new piece of legislation, but we have, you know, we do have the ability to do things. And we've just got the county council to pass a law with teeth, and we have to find a way to make those teeth work.
Again, that's something that perhaps at our next meeting.
Why not at this meeting? Why not the discussion internally here before?
Well, we can have that discussion, but I would like to have give the time for commissioners to think about it, to come up with ideas that they might have, and then we would do it in I think, a more useful way, rather than just jump at it tonight. And
I don't agree, but again, I'm just one voice.
Well, let's hear from other commissioners and we'll see what they say.
Yeah, let's hear from other commissioners. Does anybody else feel that we should be moving more aggressively, and specifically what can we do?
I have been concerned since the formation of this commission, our reconstruction, that we really haven't had a single case that rose to the level of the commission. I want to acknowledge that that Director Smith is fielding a lot of work and taking care of it before it gets to us. So that doesn't mean complaints aren't coming in. It means they're being resolved before they have to rise to us. Nonetheless, I anticipate there's some egregious things out there and cases just aren't coming to us as much as we would hope they would. So I share the concern about making us a more approachable, reached entity. We had at one time talked about, when we had live meetings, putting ourselves in the community at various places. Yet, Commissioner Apter, I think I misheard you. I think I heard you speaking of raising a test case. And I don't believe we can raise a test case.
Well, I don't mean that we created out of whole cloth.
Oh, I know you didn't mean that.
I simply mean that we proactively go to NAACP, other organizations, and specifically tell them what we could do if someone felt discriminated against. I don't think we have ever done anything like that. And I personally am not sure what we would do and how we could do it.
Let me speak to the NAACP question, but only from the limited perspective of Mary Didoni. As you know, I've been a member of the NAACP longer than I've been a member of this body. And we have people in the NAACP who are very knowledgeable and have spoken before the county council about the laws that were passed to form us and revise us. So the NAACP leadership is aware. There just hasn't been a case of anybody saying we should take that to the Human Relations Commission. And that includes me sitting in the NAACP meetings and occasionally saying if we wanted, we could address that with the Human Relations Commission.
I understand your point of view, and I am involved with civil rights organizations as well. But the Human Relations Commission has never spelled out what it would do if a complaint were brought to its attention. What would and could we do to encourage people who feel that kind of discrimination to raise it to us, with us?
Are you proposing that we prepare a presentation that would fit in the timeframes appropriate for the Caucus of African American Leaders and the NAACP in particular, and offer it to them, ask for a place on their agenda?
Well, I'd say once we know what we would do if something were brought for us to adjudicate, yeah, sure.
Okay.
But we don't know. We haven't done that. That part hasn't been done. What would we, as the Human Relations Commission, do to enhance the teeth in a situation where individuals who are trying to do rentals, I mean, there are lots of other ways too, but the rental is the most obvious way. So
Commissioner Sorrow.
Well, I think I would just like to add, I just want to follow on, I think, Chairman Peterson, with your comment that it would probably be best if we were to sort of outline some parameters for creating a plan for what we would do, because we're kind of in flux at this point, right? So the whole civil rights bill for Anne Arundel County, I don't even know if it's in effect yet. I know that it was passed, but I'm not sure at what point it will actually be effective, number one. And number two, our county Director Smith's office literally just in the last session got subpoena powers. So up until just recently, that what we could do as the Human Relations Commission was somewhat limited just by law. We had some limits on what we could do, but I think it is a good idea to develop a plan and an outreach strategy, but I think we need to know what that strategy is and know what tools we have available to us before we start saying, well, we got to go out and do something. We need to really have a handle on what we can do, what the law allows us to do, and then make a plan from there.
Any other commissioners? Yeah, I just want to say that we have been addressing the complaints through our previous statutory responsibility in the way that it was outlined. And Director Smith, you might talk about how that works.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So when citizens have complaints, they do bring those complaints to my office, or they complete a form online that is automatically transmitted to my office. We do interview the complainant and determine whether an investigation is warranted. We have had some staffing issues in the office. I will make you all aware of that. But nevertheless, we do an investigation, and if the matter can be resolved before rising to the level of a hearing, that's generally, quite frankly, preferable. So just so that for your general information, at agencies, most complaints are unsubstantiated, not because you try to have that outcome, but just because that is the trend, right? When you get complaints of discrimination from the public, they will tend to be unsubstantiated more often than not. Substantiated complaints often settle out and mediate before they go to a hearing. In practicality, very few cases go to hearing. That's just the nature of, I don't want to say the business, but the business. That's kind of how it works typically. While Commissioner Apter is right that, no cases have come to the commission for hearing, it's just because none have been appropriate for hearing yet. We do receive some complaints. We've had to be careful about how many complaints we accept versus referring them to the state because of our capacity to timely investigate those cases. And so now that we have a little more legal authority, we're able to do a little bit more education outreach and secure our full-time investigator in the office. We've been in a sort of stage of building, and
so will there be a full-time investigator with a $600,000 budget?
There already is a PIN. So there was already a budget for a full-time investigator. The person that we had in the position based on availability and experience was half-time, and that person recently moved on for another position. And so we advertised that vacancy. This commission was aware that it was advertised. I think I shared that information with everyone. And we have just finished the interview process for a full-time investigator in the office.
And do we know what a full-time investigator's responsibilities would be and what would be, our role in that? In other words, I just don't see in writing any place other than, if there is viable charges, that the Human Relations Commission can deal with it. We need to be very specific, and we need to have there has to be a first case, and that first case needs to be, whether it's handled before it gets to us or through us, that's fine. Either way, but it has to be, and we have to promote to the folks at CASA and other, organizations, what we are doing, what we can do, and make it a viable option.
So just, to answer your question, the procedures for handling complaints are posted on my office's website. I believe they're posted on the commission's website. Those procedures were vetted before this commission actually approved those procedures, and so they are publicly available. So there is written information about what happens when a complaint comes in, all the way through what happens if it goes to hearing. I would add, just in terms of things, and I hear you about what the complaint could be what the commission could be actively doing. I think that it is the role of every commissioner to consider what types of activities the commission should and can be engaged in to support that work. And education and outreach is one critical component. Many commissioners represent councilmanic districts, liaising with your council people, liaising with the people in your district, liaising with the organizations in your district, and appearing for events are certainly not out of the realm of possibility. But in terms of what this office would do and how it interacts with the commission, it certainly is not appropriate for this office to direct the commission's activities. We can certainly make recommendations. We can provide information that might help you to make some decisions. But I think there are ways that even without cases, that the commission could be very active, and working in this area. It's about your availability of time and the commitment that folks have to showing up and doing some of that work.
Commissioner Sorrow.
Right. I was just going to add, I do think it's important, visibility of the commissioners is I think important. For example, at the Unity Day event, there were only a few of us there, but those of us who were there were able to really talk about what the Human Relations Commission does to people, to folks who were there, and really promote the Human Relations Commission. And I know that in my work, I promote our Office of Equity and Human Rights to the legal services providers and others who advocate for people who may have been discriminated against. And also at the movie night, the equity, or what was it, Testing the Divide, that was a really good a good outreach event and opportunity for commissioners, those of us who were there, to speak to the community and talk about what the Human Relations Commission does. So I do think participation of the commissioners in the events and actively reaching out to the community and our partners, the people that we communicate with, to let them know about the office and the Office of Equity and Human Rights and the commission. I think that, that's a good start to doing what you're talking about wanting to do, Commissioner Apter.
Well, I appreciate that. I do think that I would be surprised if any of the commissioners had finite knowledge of what we could do in such an instance. You know, if you would direct us to, you know, how we would educate ourselves before we can educate other people. I mean, does anybody on this commission think that they know what the teeth are that we as commissioners have at our disposal?
I'm not sure at this time. I don't know exactly what teeth that we have to do it, but I'm totally up for learning. That's for sure.
The discussion we're having now is something, again, that I would recommend that people come with suggestions at a future meeting, maybe our next meeting, and probably our next meeting, and that we generate a plan to do the outreach and education and activist stuff that we need to do to get affordable housing and get people to get affordable housing on the minds of people, and also to get people to be less reticent to file complaints with us. That's the teeth that we have. A plan and description of what that plan would take in the way of Mark, you're a public relations expert, in the way of public relations activities that we might engage in. So that's what I would.
That I am a public relations professional, but if I don't have the knowledge of what we can do, in other words, it would be, if we're going to meet the next month, whatever, I would appreciate having Asha or whoever feels they have that information to, you know, one-page synopsis of the of the authority of the commission, that we all have that at the beginning of having a discussion.
Well, yeah, we can send that out. You've already gotten the legislation that was passed. That was sent out. So
that legislation doesn't say what the Human Relations Commission can do to correct egregious situations in that area.
It says what our responsibilities are. That's what we have. Well, and we need to come up with the kinds of actions and activities that you're talking about that would get us to do some of the things that you're talking about doing. We need a plan. And I'm looking for commissioners, and I'll send out an email and discuss it, but I'm looking for commissioners to come up with a workable plan.
Well, you know, if we knew what, you know, Asha just talked about how there is wording to that effect. You know, I'm sure it's my own fault that I don't know that wording, but nonetheless, I don't. And I don't think many of the other commissioners are aware of it as well. And I think comparing and trying to take the issue of affordable housing and commingle it with discrimination in rental housing is two very separate things. And I think we should not try and combine them. I think we ought to.
I'm not suggesting we combine them, but we have a responsibility to address both.
Well, let's start with what we have presumably real teeth in doing, which is, you know, the rental housing issue. Affordable housing is other, you know, in other words, in Montgomery County, lots of jurisdictions have laws that say, you know, if you're going to have to create a certain number of subsidized housing units in every new subdivision. Anne Arundel doesn't have that. That would, that's another argument. So let's deal first with where we have teeth to do something.
Point well taken. I wasn't commingling them again. I was just suggesting that we have a number of different things that we can address. We certainly want to address our responsibility in terms of how we get people to understand that they have a way that they can allege discrimination, file complaints, et cetera, et cetera. That's the responsibility that we have. And I'll have, again, you have the new statutory language. We'll send you out our old statutory language. And then what I, again, would recommend is that we then discuss what it is the commission wants to do. And whatever the commission decides to do, I will gladly endorse it.
Can we bring in the county's lawyers, whatever, to help us establish what we do and don't have authority to do?
Director Smith?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. I think that that's a great idea. If what you're seeking, and I'm not, I'm just sort of interpreting what I think you're saying. If what you're seeking is some sort of a briefing on the law and your responsibilities under the law, I'm happy to facilitate. I'm happy to facilitate that. I think the Office of Law could put something together for you. It's just a question of which meeting you'd like to use to do that.
The next one, in my opinion.
I think maybe for starters, Commissioner Apter, I don't know if you saw Chanel posted the procedures for how complaints are handled by the commission.
No, I have not. As I said,
that's in the it's in the comments.
It's in the what?
It's in the chat here. There's a link, and so that might be a good starting point to the extent we want to change the procedures, and if we're even able to do that based on current law. I mean, we are a creature of statute and created by law, and have to follow the procedures and what we have authority to do and what we are limited.
I realize that, and I'm just saying that I think that collectively over the years that I've been on the commission, we have not done much to push the envelope.
Commissioner Gaskin?
I lowered my hand, but I was going to raise the possibility of having a in-person working session outside of a regular meeting, if that's possible. To have this discussion and to ensure that everybody understands exactly what it is that we can and cannot do, what the procedures are, and to develop a plan if necessary outside of a regular meeting. They have a in-person working session. I don't know people's availability and schedules and all. Everybody's very, very busy.
Okay. Director Smith, you want me to send out an email and maybe put some dates together and then see what people's availability is, or do you want to do that, or how do we want to proceed for the in-person?
I think it's just contingent on what you want. I'm certainly open to strategizing with you outside of the meeting to, about what a working session might look like. I would like to recommend something that I think I've raised before. A little bit of strategic planning for the commission might go a long way, just so that you have an idea of how many meetings you have coming up, the things that you might want to
Right.
cover in a certain time frame, and then we can determine you know, how to time some of this. I know that the commissioners are going to need some training around how to conduct hearings. I think you'll need some training on the law. I think I've also brought forward some issues that I think we're presenting tonight, a couple of options from the Department of Justice for some programming that they do as well, that might equip the commission to do some more active work.
Okay, so given that, why don't you and I discuss this and then come back to the commission with the recommendation of some dates to have that in-person meeting?
Sure.
Is everybody good with that?
Yep.
Okay, great.
By the way, I just printed out. Am I still live?
Yes.
Okay. I just printed out one document in that chat. I don't know whether it looked like there were others, but this meeting is going to be over in a minute. I would appreciate if we all got a copy of whatever summarizes the Human Relations Commission's authority in housing.
Yeah, we have
I just printed out for myself the Human Relations Commission rules of procedure. It looked like there were some other things in that chat, but
right. We have rules of procedure, and we can also send out, I believe, Director Smith, the statutory language on housing discrimination and how we're tied into that, right?
Sure, I'm happy to resend that to the group.
Yeah, so everybody will have that.
Great.
Good. Again, good discussion. We will move forward with this planning process, and you all will be hearing from us shortly on that. I'd like to move on to the next item, which is the kind of seesaw up and down way. The legislature dealt with the wiretapping electronic surveillance legislation and some of the actions that we took. And a lot of those I did myself. And I suggested and asked commissioners also to reach out and to delegates, senators, and county council folks. So I'm assuming people did that. I sent emails out during the session to every Anne Arundel County representative, a delegate, and every Anne Arundel County senator, pointing out the need for this kind of legislation, the fact that 39 other states in the union allow for this carve out for one-party consent of conversations, and that it would help us have effective fair housing testing legislation, and ask them to, if it got to the floor, to vote for it. I got a response from Senator Bidle, who said that if it got to the Senate and the floor, or if it got to the Senate and the House, if it was voted on item by both houses, she would vote for it. I worked with Senator Sidnor, the proponent of the legislation, and had communications with Delegate Sandy Bartlett. Many of you know her. And she is the vice chair of the House Judiciary Committee. She responded to me, and I sent the response that she sent to me to Senator Sidnor, which he said he would follow up with her. We were successful in the Senate. The bill passed out of the Senate with a margin of 28 for, 17 against, which isn't bad given some of the contentious discussion that they were having in the Senate. It went over to the House on March 21st. I believe they had a hearing around that time, and they also had a hearing earlier in the session in February. And unfortunately, the House Judiciary Committee decided not to bring it up for a vote. So it never got out of the House Judiciary Committee. Subsequent to that, I've had conversations with Delegate Bartlett's staff, pointed out that it would have been helpful for us who support this kind of legislation if it could have been passed in whatever form. And my point was, you can't amend something that never gets passed. I hope to continue to have conversations with Delegate Bartlett and her staff, and I will communicate with Senator Sidnor, and I hope with your blessing that we would encourage them to reintroduce this legislation. I would like and hope that maybe Delegate Bartlett would put it forward, and that if we could get her to put it forward, then both Delegate Bartlett could have conversations with the Speaker Jones, and Senator Sidnor, I'm sure, has had discussions with the President of the Senate, Senator Ferguson. And if we can get that kind of support, I think we can get this legislation passed. But it's going to take more than me to get this done. So I'll also be talking with the county executive. I would encourage all of you to do the same. And it would also be helpful if each of you in your councilmanic district could check in with your council person and see if they were aware that this legislation was active in this last legislative session, if they would reach out to Delegate Bartlett especially, and ask for an affirmative sponsorship of this in the next legislative session. And that would be very helpful. Again, we came close, but in these legislative activities, it usually takes 2 or 3, and sometimes even 4 times to get a bill passed. So we did pretty well this session, but did not see the legislation signed by the governor. Anyone have any questions about this? I assume everybody is still on board with trying to get this passed. I mean, it's really critical. As Commissioner Sorrow said, it's kind of difficult to get a valid response from an agent, rental agent, if you say, I'm going to tape this conversation with your consent, and I want to ask you if you would rent this to me, given my national origin, et cetera, or if I have my source of income is whatever that might be. And of course, they would respond affirmatively because they know they'd be being taped. So hopefully we can address this and move forward on that.
My suggestion.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Am I alive? No.
Yeah. Oh, do you have a question, comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. My comment would be that renaming this piece of legislation so that it doesn't strike that the primary reason for it is wiretapping. Wiretapping has a negative connotation. I think we need to come up with a name that's more positive. It just sort of, both sides of the abortion issue had positive names for their side. And I think we ought to come up with a new title that doesn't start with a phrase like wiretapping. That's all.
Okay. I believe the reason that it was titled that way is because it was amending the wiretapping electronic surveillance statute in the state. So I believe that's why it was titled that way.
I'm just speaking as a PR person. As a PR person, if we're resubmitting it next year, I think whoever is submitting it at the legislative legislative whichever legislature initiates it, it'd be great to brainstorm and come up with a title that's less easy to kind of go, oh, that's a terrible thing, wiretapping. We don't like that.
Okay. I'll pass that comment on.
Thank you.
Senator Sidnor and to Delegate Bartlett.
I think I'd just like to add to that I think that asking Delegate Bartlett to sponsor it on the House side is a really good idea. She's the vice chair of the Judiciary Committee, and I think that her chair, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, I understand was the one that was holding it back, and his concerns. They guard very, very carefully that two-party consent statute. So she may be able to sway Delegate Clippinger a little bit. And I have heard that he is open to talking and being educated on the need. They just didn't get to it this session, but I think there's hope.
Right. Thank you. That's great. Fantastic. Okay, why don't we move on to the next topic? Director Smith, do you have a report?
I held the report because of the presentation and the other items that I knew were on the agenda for this evening. So I do have two issues. However, okay. I don't have a report this evening.
That's fine.
So I think that the two things that I wanted to raise were the two programs that are being offered by the Department of Justice. I sent a message to each of, I believe I sent it to the commission, just outlining what these courses would look like. One of them, one I think is a training for commissioners on having community conversations and conflict resolution. And the other is a program that the commission could potentially sponsor to have discussions about race in the community. So it would be sponsoring a community conversation on race. Did everyone get that? It would have been two separate emails, and I'm happy to go over them if you'd like. I'm just pulling them up for myself. If you bear with me for a moment. Okay, I see the message in the chat about forwarding them again, and I'm happy to do it. So the subject line for each of those emails, one was DOJ training opportunity, the other was DOJ programmatic opportunity. The training opportunity is a skills-based training regarding conflict resolution. It's offered at no cost. Our regional representative from the Department of Justice shared it with me. It's called Facilitating Meetings Around Community Conflict, FMACC. It's used to build commissioners' conflict resolution skills and prepare the commission to facilitate conflict resolution meetings. They are one mechanism that the commission can use to decrease community tensions when incidents occur. So if there is something that happens in the community, it would allow the commission to respond and to host meetings that are intended to reduce conflict. The training is best done in person, but it can be accommodated virtually. It will require 2 4-hour sessions for a total of 8 hours. So it is a commitment. It's best if the sessions are held on consecutive days or as close together as possible. Evening and weekends can be accommodated. I will say that the trainer does not recommend doing all 8 hours at once. She was very clear about that. So that's the first one.
I would certainly sign up for that. And I certainly agree with dividing the hours up.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
So that was the first one. I can certainly move to the second one. The second one is a programmatic opportunity. And the Department of Justice facilitates something called a Dialogue on Race program, DOR. Our regional representative advised that she's willing to do an informational session for the commission so that you can understand more about it, provided that it's in May or after that. It's a program for community groups. It's locally focused. It's best done in person. And basically, community leaders and community members come together to talk about race in a manner that opens lines of communication, it fosters mutual understanding, and it decreases conflict and tensions. So there are 4 total sessions that are 1 to 2 hours each. The first session contemplates who are we as a community through sharing of personal stories. It allows community members to get to know each other. The second session contemplates where are we, meaning that we explore personal and shared stories regarding the community's racial history from the perspectives of the participants, right? So it's where you kind of think about the big things that have happened in a community around race and, how they have impacted the community at large. The third session is where do we want to be? And that involves members of the community collaborating to develop a shared vision for the community. And the fourth session contemplates what will we do as individuals and with others to make a difference. And in that session, you develop action plans. It can be done as a one-time community event, or the commission can do it as a train-the-trainer where you participate in it as a small group, and then you would co-facilitate a group for the larger community. As I said, that one's a little more complicated. I think because it's a program that you'd be sponsoring. Right. And so it would be great, I think, if Denise Nazaire, who is our regional representative, could come and talk to you about it a little bit more. But that's the gist of it.
Okay, great. As we're heading, we have about 2 minutes left. Commissioner Hatcher, I'll defer the Annapolis liaison report to later if you have one. And we have no old business. We have no new business. I'd like to say that the next meeting of the Human Relations Commission will be 6 p.m. May 16th. And with that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second it.
It made the motion.
No, I didn't. But anyway, I'll second
it. Who made the motion?
Commissioner Michaels.
Oh, Commissioner Michaels. Okay, is there a second?
Yes, Mark.
Mark, go ahead.
Who was the second?
Mark Apter.
Okay, thank you. I got it right this time. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Thank you, and all those opposed, hearing none. I want to thank everybody. It's been a really great meeting. Got a lot of work to do, but it seems like we have a positive energy, and looks like we will be coming up with very good work plans and activities that we can participate in. So I want to thank everybody and say this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank
you,
you.
Dean.
Night, everyone.
Good night.